Hello and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League, brought to us and powered by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. And there's a lot of free things that you can get with a Prime membership. You can get free shipping, you can get free movies, you also get free music, and that's just over on that side of it. Then if you link that over to your Twitch account, you can get free content for games, you can get free games, and those are on a rotating monthly catalog. You get free skins and even some of our games. I think we got some Rogue Company skins out there if you're still playing out on that one, so make sure to pick those up. And you also get a free Twitch Prime subscription to your favorite streamer. So if all that free content sounds great for you, then make sure that you pick up a Prime membership and link that over for Prime Gaming. Thank you so much to Prime for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. Make sure that we can provide so much great content for you, the fans out there as well. I'm J Mac. I got Mifflin joining me over on the desk. We get ready to jump into our third and final set of the day. And what a big one this is, Mifflin. The Jade Dragons, the current number 2 seed. Oni Warriors sitting at that 4th seed, but trying for their opportunity to battle in and maybe take that 2nd seed away from the Dragons.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this set, man. So many implications for seeding, not only for the 2 teams that are playing in the set, but all teams on the peripherals around them. Last time they matched up, it was an underdog story for the Oni Warriors. The Jade Dragons got to be hoping for a win here today, man. I don't know. I feel like this is going to be an exciting set. The only thing that I'm predicting is it's going 3. I mean, it just feels like it has to, right?
Could be a very big set. Could go the full distance. Could maybe not be as close as we think. But let's take a look at the schedule, see what you've already missed so far today. Because like I said, this is the 3rd set of the day that we're jumping into. Leviathans found a 2-1 over the Scarabs earlier on to kick off our day. Tartarus Titans just got themselves a 2-0 over the Valkyries, and now that leads us to the Oni Warriors and the Jade Dragons. And then tomorrow, make sure to tune in for another triple header as we open up with a massive game right out the gate. Olympus Bolts and Atlantis Leviathans, Scarabs Kings, and then the Dragons will be back one more time with the Titans to close out this not the final week, but closing out this week of the SPL and then leading into our final one, which will have 10 more sets of games to go through. So still plenty more SPL to go for the remainder of this phase. And I mean, talking about the standings and talking about the implications of it, a 7-3 Jade Dragons, a 6-4 not only Camelot Kings, but also Oni Warriors could lead to some shakeups in the standings if the Oni Warriors do manage to find themselves a win up against the Jade Dragons. With the Titans finding their win, that also kind of closes up that gap a little bit. And I mean, again, Mifflin, we come into the second half of this phase, and it was a very clear-cut top 4 and a very clear-cut bottom 4. There was a pretty nice little gap between those, and ever since these games have been going through from week 5 into now week 6, that gap has been slowly closing up, at least in the middle. At the top end, though, the Leviathans continue to climb up as they are 3 wins above the Jade Dragons still at this point.
Yeah, can't sleep on Phase 3 Zap, man, all right? That guy's always saving something for the tail end of the year, and rightfully so. If you're gearing up towards Worlds, it's the best time to do it. But the Jade Dragons, I think, hot on their heels. I'm pretty excited, man. I mean, Jade Dragons versus Leviathans would be an amazing matchup to evaluate, but we got to get through the Oni Warriors first, or maybe the Oni Warriors got to get through the Dragons. I don't know. This is going to be an exciting one. But I've been distracted this entire time. We got a player in here for an interview, and I've been looking at him.
Yeah, we do have a pretty good player standing by for our pregame interview. If you're wondering who it is, it's PBM standing by with Dolson for the pregame.
That's right. Mike's with me. You're out here again, Mike. Is the rest of your team, are they dodging the interviews or what?
I'm not sure. I don't know whether to take Mifflin's comments positively or be a little bit skeptical. I don't know if
he didn't specify.
Yeah, I don't know if he's eyeing me down for revenge or something. Like I don't know. I don't know what to do.
He says no respect with your hands.
Yeah.
Just put him down by your side.
I'm just gonna leave him here if that's cool.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah. That's actually hypertrophy. That's optimal for bicep growth. You just leave them up top there and get the blood flow really going. We'll get our mind off Mifflin though a little bit, right? We'll turn our eyes towards your opponents here today. Unfortunately, I do have to ask you a real question. Oni Warriors hot on your heels. The team worried about retaining one of those top 2 spots?
They're all just watching TikToks in the booth right now, so yes. So I'm not sure what to think.
Are you on TikTok?
No.
How's your so you don't know what a For You page is. Do you know what their page looks like on the app?
I think Max has a lot of cars and New York guys who do a thick Italian accent.
No kidding. So mine is on vehicles and pizza right now in the player booth. I want to talk a bit about the Oni Warriors, if you will, with me, Mike.
Love to.
What do you think you attribute the hot streak there onto? They finally started to put it together here a bit in Season 9. Season 8 wasn't their year. What do you think's been working well for them?
Dardes is no longer on 140 ping along with Fred and Neil. I think that mid trio is pretty important to the success of that team. Yeah, pretty much just that. Dardes gap.
Do you think Dardes gaps your mid laner here today? You got Pagon out of the mid lane. A lot of teams would love to have him. Are you worried about his matchup with Dardes?
Historically, Dardes has a mental block against me. He feels, I'd say, intimidated. To understate it, he feels intimidated. He normally just trolls against us to try to play it off, but we all know he's just actually afraid.
Yeah, what do you think? We've seen plenty of matchups. You know, we've seen solo canyons this year, jungle chasms. I want you to give me, against the Oni Warriors, most likely to be gapped and most likely to gap the Oni Warriors on your team.
Most likely to be gapped, I would say, is Scream. He has not been looking good for quite some time. Most likely to gap the enemy is either me or maybe even Neil. We are a coin flip at any given moment, so.
Got it.
Yeah.
Final question, deadlifts, overrated or underrated?
Extremely underrated.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Got it. You heard it here first. Deadlifts, they're the way to go. That's been Polar Bear Mike. We'll head back to the desk to start this one off.
I feel like just like Mike, we just need to keep our arms up at the ready at any time.
I'm trying to get that bicep growth.
For
or whatever.
real, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready to just stay like this the rest of the desk, and I'll move. Just be prepared, much like at least for Mike is. You know, the rest of his team maybe not so much, as he said in the booth. All of them are kind of looking at TikTok videos. Maybe for the Oni Warriors, keeping themselves a little bit more dialed in, a little bit more focused, because they need to be focused up to find a win up against the Jade Dragons. Remember, standings implications on the line. Oni Warriors coming off a little bit of a rough patch in the last couple of weeks of play. Haven't been able to find some success as of recent to try and grow themselves up and really bring back into that top two. Because as we move towards playoffs, that top two spot is so important, because you only need to win one set when you're in the top two in order to make it to that qualification towards Worlds. And a team like the Oni Warriors, and really any of the teams in the league, would love that opportunity.
And I think Mike hits the nail on the head as to what the key factor to the Oni Warriors wins are, and it's that mid 3v3, so important. In particular, recently Cuvo Fred has just been having a great go of it. Has re-added the Raven to his God pool, and his God pool is looking pretty good now because of it. Mighty performance up against the Valkyries recently. Otherwise, Neoma on any given day is either just going to dominate or be dominated, it feels like. Sometimes that guy is walking around with purpose and dominating and getting on top of objectives and burning relics, and then other times he's walking around like blind, like Stevie Wonder style. I don't know, man. Like it really is hot or cold sometimes with Neoma, but this is sure to be an entertaining set, to be sure. I mean, PBM comes in with that kind of energy. Something's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, and when you look at some of the past performances, you know, just between Neoma, even depending on the God that he gets, sometimes we get the 0-5 Ymir, sometimes we get the 0-0 Ymir. I think he actually had a game just yesterday where he ends up going undying on a Ymir, which is something that we don't see too often, considering we always talk about, you know, the playmaking possibilities of a God like that, a pick like that, to where you're probably dying in the early, but hey, you set up for maybe a double kill for your jungler or your carry in that regard. But
Or you just died.
Or you just died. You know, just depends on how the game is going and, you know, maybe who the opponents are out there. But Jade Dragons are a very tough opponent. I mean, this is a team that was coming out of Phase 2, moving in. They were the ones right on the cusp of being able to kind of break that SPL set win streak. Then they hit their loss, and then maybe a couple more losses throughout there. So it hasn't been the cleanest for the Jade Dragons, but still being able to maintain that second seed spot. Oni Warriors, again, right hot on their heels, have been in that top 4 for pretty much the entirety of the phase out there. And kind of seeing maybe the dynamic of that mid 3v3 as the game continues on might be the most interesting part to kind of take out and watch for this game, Mifflin.
Yeah, I think so. I'm also really curious as to, like, just straight up what Dardes is going to play, because when he's playing Dardes style picks, when the AMC was top of the meta, when the Morgan's really good, he was dominating. Since then, having to adjust to like the P-Vegas change, he's been locking in things like On Her, not exactly loving On Her, but aggressive, I guess. We'll see.
Dardes is one of those players to just kind of jump in and slam the W key sometimes. But as we go into picks and bans for game number 1 between the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors, immediately the Dragons will start to target out one of the power picks for the Oni Warriors in that dodgy, making sure that Cuvo Fred a little less comfortable. And a Cabrakan ban. And now on a lot of teams you would say, okay, well this is a support ban, or maybe this is a soul lane ban, but as of recent, and even talking to Dardes in his postgame in his last set that he ended up winning against, this is a pick that they locked in the top 2, and Dardes said, no, this is a pick for me the entire time.
Yeah, Dardes has been saying a lot of stuff about his picks recently. He has assured me that the Oni Warriors have been cooking up something spicy for this week, so Could be a completely different look at P's and B's for the Oni Warriors as they try and play around the Beats Aegis ruling. We'll see. I think Cabrakan was essentially a byproduct of that, but now with it banned out, the Jade Dragons won't have to concern themselves with that eclectic pick, and instead can just go back towards the standard, get themselves some pressure with their first selection.
Dachi, Cabrakan, Tsukuyomi, the bans for the Dragons. Warriors take away Hades, Ymir, and Yamoja. So a little bit towards the duo lane there, but I say certainly those are the first pick for the Dragons. And Cthulhu in the top 2 for the Oni Warriors. Not very often that we see this be one of the #1 go-to gods, and the fact that, you know, maybe AMC is still available, some of these other picks, maybe shred some of these objectives still up. You think it's a risky play for the Warriors to grab a Cthulhu this early in the draft?
I don't think AMC has anything to do with that risk, though. With nerfs to AMC recently, not being able to buy Aegis, I haven't been impressed with that guy's been able to put out in the last couple of weeks, so I'm sure the Oni Warriors probably not looking too much towards him. But risky in that you could give over one piece of the combo if the Jade Dragons so choose. Just take a Morrigan for yourself, and then all of a sudden you're not concerned with Dardes getting one of his favorites and a great transformation. Double Cthulhu Descent into Madness is very, very difficult to deal with. Singular, you at least have one on your own side to separate some of these team fights, and that seems to be the strategy that Pagon has come up with here. Osiris is the lock-in for the Jade Dragons, though. Scream's going to get active. Only thing I know about Scream in this pick is that he's W King. Regardless of he thinks whether or not he thinks he's making it out alive, he's usually just taking someone with him.
Now, it is to be noted that this Osiris was the pick that did land him the triple-double this year. Went 12, 10, and 10 that game on the Osiris, so maybe we see a repeat performance out of the Jade Dragons jungler in this game. Though his team probably hoping he doesn't die as much and almost nearly cost them a game to try and guarantee a triple-double. But Cthulhu Cupid for the Oni Warriors, one final pick before we jump into the second wave of bans. I was wondering if it was going to be maybe a mid-selection for Dardes, but no, it'll be something in the jungle for Cuvo Fred as Robin gets picked up for the Oni Warriors. And do you feel that this Robin is maybe a good answer to this early game Osiris?
You've got decent self-peel against Osiris. You're not answering him. You're not fighting that guy. You don't want to line up against Osiris as Robin, but you've got good disengage tools. Osiris walks up on you, puts a sickle in your chest. You hit him with that 10-hand sumo slap, slow him, walk away. As you're walking, turn around, hit him with the actual 10-hand shadow fist. I didn't name the ability. That's just what it's called. That roots him. Keep walking, right? So I think that there's great survivability for Robin. Otherwise, Robin's got decent targets already on the Jade Dragons. CERN generally has to use that ultimate for self-peel. Doesn't work against Robin with the overhead kick. Morrigan, very telegraphed, and when she's going to burst you down, even from stealth, with the dark aspect, she kind of like Banshee screeches or whatever the noise she makes, and Robin's going to overhead kick that as well. And with itemization for Robin generally just being every single item in the mace tree, one of them being Crusher, that dot damage that he's going to apply with every single one of his abilities will be able to restrict the Morrigan stealth.
Well, as the bans start to fly by for these two squads, Oni Warriors will take Camazotz and Atlas off the board, so focusing out a little bit towards that solo lane and even over towards PBM with the Atlas ban. AMC, the call for the Jade Dragons, maybe thinking that Dardes would still be willing to go to that pick as a mid laner has not been selected, but as you mentioned, with this AMC not being as popular, with the Morrigan now being picked up for the Jade Dragons, it kind of opens the door and maybe makes you wonder what Dardes would go towards. Notably, Vulcan, Poseidon still open in this Beads Aegis meta that we're in, or maybe lack thereof Aegis in this regard. Maybe surprised that those two picks have made it all the way through in this far into the draft, Methlin.
Maybe. There's a lot of options here, though, for Dardes. I wonder if the idea is to facilitate Cuvo Fred, and I think that's a pretty good idea for the Warriors considering the performances he's been having recently. Dardes has gone towards things like Aphrodite in the past, and well, Aphrodite's got Beads Aegis inherent to the kit. I thought that maybe that's a pick that we would see this week just as a response to the meta, and if anyone's going to pull it out, it would be Dardes, but we'll have to wait a little while longer for his lock-in. Instead, it's Horus for the Oni Warriors. I wonder what that's going to look like in the team fight, right? If Cthulhu's Descent into Madness, Horus could just deliver them to your backline, right? It could be a very tough situation for the Jade Dragons to figure out how they want to maneuver. As of now, the weakness of the Jade Dragons draft, I think, is initiation. They haven't exactly got standard initiation just yet. Thor would help out a lot in that regard. A standard Guardian would probably do a lot of the heavy lifting as well. Oni Warriors, on the other hand, I think their primary concern is probably finishing off kills. When I look at their draft, they've got great dive potential, pretty decent CC lockdown between Cthulhu and Horus, but Robin's going to do like 80% of it, needs a little bit of help. Cupid's going to be, for the most part, just dealing with the front line of the Jade Dragons, so something that can follow up on that dive, something the Oni Warriors probably looking to lock in for themselves.
So it was a Thor hover for the Jade Dragons. They turn away from that and go to Amaterasu and Terra instead. If it was the Thor lock, and I go to a whole conversation between, Thor or Osiris, which one do you throw for jungle, which one do you throw for solo in that regard, but good thing is I don't have to, and it's a very standardized draft. That's been picked up for the Jade Dragons as Terra going over to PBM and Final K on the Ama. So Ama Cthulhu, probably not a whole lot of action to be had over there, but Terra Cernanos in the dual lane lining up against Cupid Horus. I mean, how does that matchup kind of go over there, Mifflin?
It's pretty decent for the Oni Warriors, I think. You just got a really, really aggressive composition. Horus locks you down with a fracture immediately into the updraft. Cupid slams you with a heart bomb. By the time you touch the ground, you're taking another stun. Whereas Terra needs a couple of levels before she's really able to get aggressive. Cern, sure, with some recent buffs, very strong in the 1v1, very good at applying pressure, but you still need a couple of levels till you're there as well. So as far as the earliest portions of the laning phase, I'm probably favoring the Oni Warriors in the 2v2. Hunbots to round out their draft as well. I like this a lot. It does give you a little bit more AoE CC, but where is that pick going to go? I think the primary question.
Yeah.
Hunbots in the past has been played in the solo too. I mean, Cyclone Spin used to be like the guy for that back when he was playing solo.
But there's a Cthulhu.
There's also Cthulhu. That's probably headed mid, if I'm being honest. It's either.
What?
I'll tell you what, man.
Okay.
I'll tell you what.
Tell me, Mifflin.
It's either Cthulhu mid or Hunbots mid, but that Robin is going to the jungle.
That Robin is going to be Cuba Fred's stamp. He blocked that in himself and said, this is my pick. No one can take it from me. So we'll have to see if this Hunbats does go to Dardas, if this Cthulhu goes to Dardas, question marks across for maybe those couple of picks there. It looked like a pretty easy draft to kind of break down for the Oni Warriors as far as where they were going, but maybe when it comes down to the team fights, you can make it a little bit easier. Mifflin, kind of talk to me about the Oni Warriors team fight late game. You say you get some of that AoE CC now at the Hunbats with the rest of this composition locked in for the Warriors. Do you like this once we get to that team fight stage, and is this a composition that kind of needs to hit the ground running to get this team to that point?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If it's Cthulhu mid and you're going full magic damage, I like the Oni Warriors draft. If it's Cthulhu solo and you're like a slamming a tank build, I hate the Oni Warriors draft because they just won't have any magic damage. Hunbots, for the most part, as opposed to like the standard assassins that we see nowadays, doesn't exactly have the highest damage output either. Robin, a bit slacking as well, so could be a physical defense stack if it isn't full damage Cthulhu. If it is full damage Cthulhu, I'm not so mad about it.
So maybe the draft for the Warriors kind of hindering on where these two picks end up lining out. Kind of talk to me a little bit about the Jade Dragons, though. I mean, they've got some decent AoE CC between the Cernos, between the Terra and the Amaterasu out there. How do you kind of feel about the Jade Dragons kind of early to late game transition that they've drafted for themselves, Miff?
I think they've got great early game bridges. If the Osiris is headed to the jungle, and you have to assume that it is, that's your bridge to the late game. Once you get there, the Morgan's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Amaterasu is just like standard lockdown initiation. Very strong as well. Terra, as a counter initiator, I think is going to have some pretty decent matchups into Hunbots in particular. If you can proc Earthen Fury first, as long as you can get that ability out there, every single time Hunbots hits that target with Fear No Evil, you're going to get that burst heal. So at least able to mitigate some of the initiation from the Oni Warriors. I think that both teams have got a lot that they can lean on, but it's going to come down to individual performances, maybe primarily in the jungle. If Scream just hits the ground running, the Jade Dragons can run with them. If Cuvo Fred does the same thing, I expect the same from the Warriors.
Could be some good transformation targets for this Morgan as well. I mean, you've got a Hunbats and a Robin just on the opposite side of your own. Then you've got an Osiris, or maybe even if you want to do a double Terra or an extra Amaterasu. Could be an interesting game number one. We'll see who takes it home first between the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors.
That's right, a battle for second seed as the Dragons and the Oni Warriors go toe-to-toe. Remember, early on in Phase 3, the Oni Warriors were able to beat the Jade Dragons in 3 games. So this one very important for the Jade Dragons to win, as Dolson, Gourmizer, and Billy will be bringing you the action for Game 1, Game 2, and maybe Game number 3. Now, Gore, the pinnacle of the Jade Dragons mentality has often been get aggressive early. Even if you're not funneling kills together, it's been controlling objectives. On the flip side, the Oni Warriors have been able to do a bit of that themselves. And they've got a Robin out of the mid lane. I have to assume Dardes should feel pretty strong here in the first handful of levels.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's almost actively combating what I'm thinking about Cuvo, and when I look at the Cthulhu, like a lot of their comp makes me think, okay, farm for a little while, see what we can do, wait for the fights. Then I see the Raven, and you know, we've talked about it out of the jungle. I think at least in mid, it could probably have a very similar effect where level 3 is going to be where you can hit a power spike and start controlling some things. At least in this fight, you're going to have that immunity. That'll help out a lot up against the Osiris, but also mainly against this Morrigan. How much damage?
Yep.
It feels like she can output. I feel like it's going to give Dardes a lot of opportunity. Good disengage when your ult comes up, so it's going to be easy to escape the two of them. The downside is going to be the follow-up, right? Pagon, early on, would not be surprised if it's an Amaterasu kind of transformation or into the Osiris.
Yep.
Something that allows you to kind of keep chasing people down, stick to
Sure.
them. And so Dardes is going to need that survivability in order to keep through. And, you know, if we're talking about the fact that you can only have one Beads or Aegis, he gets the Aegis and the Beads all in one ability, so it gives him a little flexibility.
Yeah, not bad.
He still goes Blink first, so I don't know what to do about that one, but, you know.
That's, right. Well, it doesn't. You know, to your point, doesn't need either Beads or Aegis once he starts to level that ability. Good chunky damage into Scream just a moment ago shows you why the first few levels, usually on this Raven, you're able to chain together a lot of that damage. Now Cuvo Fred, looking towards solo lane would be early, yeah, to lock down this Amaterasu, but maybe hoping to follow up on some pressure. And you bring up Amaterasu, Osiris, things like that for Pagon. Come teamfight time, absolutely have to start considering this Cthulhu, and with that, you have to start looking at both teams and their ability to kill him off. What Scream's hoping to do early here. That's a stun on Anika. Chainsaw begins to warm up a bit, but the damage simply not enough. And Nika dashes through, Fidoke able to clean up the first kill, and Dardes on a rotation over from mid will not complete the regank. 1-for-1 trade, but a good start for the Oni Warriors getting first blood.
Yeah, that first blood means a lot. Nika being able to get it helps offset the death. Also helps offset the fact that Fidoke got the kill, so it's not like, you know, Cuvo in this instance would have gotten the kill and then maybe Fidoke finds himself up a level ahead. So it keeps the lane kind of more stagnant and a little more balanced, although Fidoke is going to get a little bit of farm off of the death, so he might hit 5 first, which is definitely going to be a little more devastating.
Dardes in between the walls, and the transformation from Pagon into the Hunbats. You got the. If you told me the first Fear No Evil of the game wasn't going to be from Cubo Fred, it was going to be from Pagon before Cubo even hits level 5, I would have called you a liar, but perfect timing and perfect gank from Mike. Level 3 over in the mid lane. This time,
Oh no.
Nika should be okay, but he doesn't have ult. He doesn't have his dash anymore. Simply not enough, though, from the Jade Dragons. But my goodness, the gas pedal gourd's been pressed early by the Jade Dragons.
And I like how they're playing this, right? I mean, you had said it, and you know, I've seen this discussion out there because we do harp a lot on the fact that the Dragons like to play an early game and strength. And we've seen that they're capable of more than that. But you're seeing this aggression in left. You're seeing aggression that's successful there in mid. You're seeing aggression that's successful over there in right, although maybe a little more mixed success over there. I think that this is a team that can play those late game team fights and can play those slow roll comps. But Mike has been like a purveyor of early game Smite. And I love seeing the team play at this style because they are... I mean, it's insane because other teams can get a similar start and still not find that early lead that the Dragons do. Just something about the way they play the early really does become the epitome of what Snowball could be.
Right. Yeah, look, you know, Mike was messing with me a bit during the interview, but talked about how Mike could be the one doing the gapping, doing the diffing. And you know what? Even in a joke, that's incredibly correct as far as one of the main win conditions for this Dragons team early in the game, where on something like a Terra, Mike can get active.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And spread his influence out just a little bit. Now, worth looking at his build, I think. Lotus Crown added for Polar Bear Mike. And so the sustain not only going to be annoying for the Oni Warriors to deal with, but little extra tankiness for the rest of the squad. Whoever's getting affected by those heals. So you have to start looking, Gore, not only at Prot Shred, but anti-heal, because Jade Dragons have a good bit of bolstering in both those categories.
And do I have good news for you?
Tell me,
And
Gordon.
for Oni Warriors fans out there.
Okay, thank God.
Well, first off, there's an Ankh already on board. Neil it actually was doing it even against comps that didn't have a lot of healing,
Right.
so going into it here, very helpful for them. I think it's going to feel really solid. Ama has some self-heals. Pagon's probably going to transform into somebody, but you got lifesteal there for Panda Cat. Mike, like you had just highlighted, has healing for everybody. Already good there. Tainted Steel as well picked up for Nika, so feeling solid, I think, on the onset of some of these anti-heal movements for the Warriors. But then you mentioned Prot Shred.
Yeah, please.
Let's talk about Horus, because
Please
I
tell me, Gord.
love my favorite part in Horus's kit. And this is such a weird niche thing, but it is on his 2, on that stun. When you are able to hit somebody, it's going to have that Prot Shred on there, right? So when you hit Fracture, you know, the dash damage is nice, cleave damage is nice, whatever. Prot reduction up to 30 when you max it. You can already see that Neil's throwing points into that ability. It feels so great, especially now that you know that there's going to be additional prots from Mike.
Yep.
To be able to negate some of those. With one more point, he'll be able to just completely negate
Completely,
it.
yeah.
And then a few more points after that, all of a sudden he's actually putting you in the negative again. So
right.
I love the idea that he's going to be at. Granted, the hard part is it's a single target stun. It's a single target Prot Shred.
Fine, okay. Uses AoE ultimate to back away from Cuvo Fred. I admire the attempted gank, but always going to be difficult. You know, if you lock Fine okay, I guess in that Fear No Evil before the Dazzling Offensive can come off, maybe you can get some damage in there. But you know, level 7, level 8, I guess still squishy enough with Golden Blade's start.
Yeah.
Maybe worth a shout.
Very, very similar to you. Like the concept, execution's going to be hard no matter what, right? Fine, okay. All he has to see is there's a Hunbats. If Cuvo blinks forward, gets the ult without dropping a Fear No Evil, that feels like a huge win. And it's just the unfortunate scenario that you're going to have to drop one and kind of force it. Right before that first tick hits, there's that small window where Fine okay can just pop the ult and have that CC immunity, and ends up working out pretty well for them. But no beats, and you're going to have to watch the cooldown timers, right? Because with the Jotuns, admittedly, it's a long cooldown for Fear No Evil, but should be up, I want to say, slightly earlier than Fine OK's. Might be a little bit of an opportunity. Yeah, 30 seconds left on that. Actually, might just be lined up. Yeah, the 20 seconds there. Unfortunate. Unfortunate for Cuvo, and a little bit unfortunate for me.
Game's over. You know what?
Yeah, well,
It's
no
so
game's over there,
lopsided.
man.
Let's get us into game number 2.
Just
already.
ignore solo lane. It doesn't exist, man. And Fine OK he's gonna be the one that starts diffing all of a sudden.
That's right.
It's a spiral.
He set the stage.
All from that one moment.
You know what, though? The Jade Dragons have set up some really nice moments early in this game. You know, some small side camp invades, a little bit of buff pressure as well. The one extra kill has resulted in a 1,500 gold lead. And with that, Jade Dragons are going to meander over to the Gold Fury. But the Oni Warriors, you know, we called them the Oni Furies, Oni Warriors in range to check. I like that aggression early on here from the Jade Dragons. Beads force off a Panda Cat, and Vote probably call that worth.
Yeah, I like that aggression from Vote more than I like the push onto the Gold Fury. And it's only because now there's an opportunity. No beads on Panda. We just saw that unless you're going to have like the perfect attempt against Fine OK, more than likely you're going to go ult for ult, and he's always going to get his back a little bit faster. Now there's a window for Cuvo to start shifting over towards the left-hand side of the map where he's already standing. All you need is a blink, which is available, and Panda Cat to be about 10 feet farther forward from his tower than where he's standing. And it opens up a very, very easy gank for the Warriors to try and find a kill, and really to equalize things. Vote's fallen slightly behind. He's behind in stacks on the Devil's Gauntlet, behind in experience. So maybe getting the ball rolling over there, helping out your carry a little bit, and keeping Cupid, especially as one of your main win conditions, alive in this game would be a good target for Cupid.
Yeah, itemization-wise as well, Gore, with the Executioner fully finished. Only the Tier 2, what I assume to be an XE for Vote, has been completed. And there is a decent little jump between Tier 2 and Tier 3, so...
Especially
that's
with the passives.
That's right, with the passives, right. If that's something that Jade Dragons can capitalize on here in the next couple minutes, could be a really, really good look. But Vote, a very tenured player, likely realizing got to play on the back foot for just a moment. Pagon, unfortunately, too far forward. That's the gank from the Oni Warriors, and it pays off. But with his death cry, Pagon has let out a Fear No Evil of his own, and that's set up a return kill on the Cuvo Fred. Another one-for-one trade. As the Jade Dragons lose their mid, but pick up the Oni Warriors jungle.
I like the reaction time from Pagon there. I mean, you burn your beads, you burn your ult, but that's just going to be a one-and-done Warriors get out alive if you don't throw everything you have onto the board there. So really good turnaround, and again, a good transformation into Cuvo, making sure that Fear No Evil is available for you. I honestly wouldn't mind seeing him keep that. Granted, we discussed it earlier. I do think that eventually the Cthulhu as a team fight tool is probably going to overtake, but knowing that the Fear No Evil is available, knowing that maybe a Dazzling Offensive is available as well, I think there's a lot of options for Pagon to make things look good. And so far, sticking with the Hunbats having that ultimate for Peel or for Secure has been a really, really solid choice for him. And again, just keeping things 1-for-1 feels great.
So Gore, early on, we've seen a little bit of mid pressure, a little bit of pressure make its way to the right side of the map, but the ADCs largely have been left alone. So it's Jin sides for a vote. Doesn't end up going into Executioner. Mindset not only to shred down FineOK here at some point, but if there's a second Cthulhu in these fights, one of them's going to be against him.
Yeah.
He's going to need the kin size to finish off some of that health.
I think, like you said, the Cthulhu, because yes, the Amaterasu, to an extent, the Osiris, definitely the Terra. It feels like 4 people on the Dragons are going to suffer from that pick. And so it's a good item pickup for vote just to make sure everybody's going to be kind of bothered by it, right? And admittedly, maybe Scream isn't going to go super hybrid, but all it takes is like 1 or 2 items, and all of a sudden that Chin size feels like it's getting a lot of value up against the Osiris. I can already tell with the build that FineOK has, it's going to be getting a lot of value there. Same thing for the Terra. And man, it'll just be a blast to watch him burn through potentially a Cthulhu there for Pagon, which might end up being a deterrent from keeping Pagon from going into that. Granted, right now it's kind of only him, you know, the Raven, decent damage, Cuvo, decent damage, but maybe not the same kind of burn that a Hunter's going to bring. Might convolute things in the middle of a team fight.
Well, Dardas likes the stat stick of the Jotuns early, but into the Transcendent, so taking a bit of a breather on immediate scaling. Need some time to stack that item up. Now, the Jade Dragons on a couple of instances, Gore, have pulled out an objective, dropped it because the Oni Warriors have showed up. Did it with the Gold Fury earlier on. A second ago, we saw a couple members of the Dragons pull out the Pyro. How much trouble is Dardas in? Stun should connect. A little bit of damage from FineOK, but what this does tell us, the 5-man rotation from the Jade Dragons, is that Gold Fury on their mind. Oni Warriors close, and Oni Warriors unable to steal away the Gold Fury, and the Jade Dragons complete the first big objective of the game. They'll get Mike out as well, and that is one clean pull for the Dragons.
Yeah, a very risky pull. But if you get it, you're fine, and in fact, even better off. If you don't get it, it was an equal game, right? So luckily for them, they're not only able to secure, which I feel like they felt somewhat more confident in. You know, low mana on Cuvo made it very difficult to anticipate something like a Fear No Evil coming through. You still had a Polymorph if you really, really needed a bunch of damage in one area or to zone the rest of the Warriors. They had their options and availability. And with that, I mean, not only do you get a massive lead, but you get to control a lot of the map.
Dardas or Nika is going to have to steal away the Pyromancer. And will be successful in doing so. I believe it's Dardas who goes up and over and snags it away. And that, you know, that one feels pretty necessary, Gore. That last Fury gave the Dragons a nice, healthy 3,000 gold lead. That Pyromancer shrinks it down just a little bit. We were at risk early on of going into the second rotation of neutral objectives with the Dragons up 5K or so, if they're able to get the Pyro and expand on that. Sometimes you just got to make a play, and Dardas is able to keep his team within striking distance.
Well, and the best thing about it is now that he has beads online, I mean, Dardas is maybe one of the safest gods in this match, period. Just, you know, you've got to jump. Admittedly, he used to get in that regard, but then you've got immunity in your kit, your beads as well, a lot of survivability that is going to come through, plus the mitigations, a little bit of self-healing. It feels like he is always going to be someone who is able to make that kind of play unless this lead gets so atrocious for the mid lane specifically that he can't even show face in front of the Dragons. There's definitely some CC on the other side, but not a lot of like heavy, immediate, hard CC that is going to lock him down so readily. I mean, you've got slows from Scream, and there is a stun in his kit, but it's a very, 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 very telegraphed stun.
Yep.
You know, FineOK's ult, otherwise you've got some slows. Mike has a stun, Pagon has a stun that will be semi-regular, but again, mostly, or more often than not, used as single target, even if they can hit multiple, especially there for Mike. And that's kind of easy for Dardes to dodge out. Same thing there for Panda Cat with the roots. So I really like him being the one to potentially make those plays and constantly go in. It might not be as easy later on. All it takes is one of those stuns to hit and you to be caught off guard without being able to pop your beads, or if they're down and your 2's on cooldown. It's a very, very niche scenario. But then you just get popped 3 times by Panda Cat. Suddenly you're close to dead. So I think that it's going to come with risks. But more often than not, he's going to do what he just did there. Get in, potentially steal an objective, in this case actually steal an objective, and then waltz away like nothing happened for you.
It's a really good look for Dardes. And because we haven't seen the fight pressure just yet from the Robin. We did see a good bit of burst, but that was like level 2 or level 3, something like that. So at least finding some presence, objective-minded. A nice look for Dardes early in this game. Didn't make me start thinking, though, of the most telegraphed stuns in SMITE. Osiris has got to have, one of them, by far. You throw out the tether and you're chasing him down. I was thinking Cupid might be up there, but that's unavoidable unless either he doesn't have stacks or he doesn't have or your opponent doesn't have beads. I think those two might be up on top core. The most telegraphed stuns. Maybe the walls from Terra.
Yeah.
Up on top of the telegraph totem pole. Some of the most telegraphed stuns in SMITE in the game right now.
Which is wired. You'd think weird, because you think at this point they just get a cell phone, man. Like, you don't gotta send things by telegraph anymore.
Yeah. That spells out stun and Morse code, by the way.
Yeah, I could hear it. Perfect.
And once it gets sent to you, that's when you end up getting stunned, which is what ends up feeling like Osiris stun is every once in a while. But Oni Warriors have been able to avoid it a bit early in the game. We did so well for 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Missed you, Gore. 17 and a half minutes have gone by. And so it's the next 30 seconds where you're about to reel us back in.
I was just going to say, if you think that's bad, you should have had to experience what Katie has dealt with for the last week, because it's been nothing but me.
That's right. Yeah, but she chose that.
Yeah, I still don't understand why.
Yeah. No, you guys are a great match. But this, a good look for the Oni Warriors. Stuns and Fields of Love onto a couple members of the Jade Dragons. Nilma ulting. Just behind the dragon, sprint from Mike, popped immediately, smashing the button to get out. Double Fear No Evil, one of which connects onto Fine. Okay, he's forced to dash away as well. But back in goes Pagon with a 3-man Fear No Evil of his own. But now the Cthulhu is big and can make the difference. Dardes with the Mystic Rush has found Pagon in the back line of this fight. Suddenly the Oni Warriors rallying around their Cthulhu, walking forward, but how forward is too far? Dardes learns the hard way as Fino adds another in this fight. Vote with another as well. This one messy, but it's the Oni Warriors with the extra one.
Yeah, they come out just slightly ahead. Vote staying alive is a big deal there. And you lose a support on one side, but jungle mid. Solid win. And credit over to the Warriors for that one, because it is a lot of turnaround. It's great reaction time from Scream to leap over the wall, making Cuvo's Fear No Evil only connect on Fine-OK. Fine-OK's Amaterasu just dashes away, does have to use relics and pretty much the entire kit to stay alive, but does get out of there. And then the Cthulhu is the opening, right? All of a sudden, it feels like Nika's going to be the resurgent factor. You get a good ult from Pagon, though, that helps kind of stifle the Warriors running over the dragons in that moment. And then maybe a little bit of a overdive from the Warriors, trying to go too deep. They get the kills, but it costs them some of their lives. I think that it comes out, again, slightly ahead for them, even more ahead, because they're able to pick up an objective off the back end while everybody's respawning and resetting. But it does showcase where some of the weaknesses for both of these drafts are, right? The Dragons, their team fight as a whole can be shaky. If Pagon turns into Cuvo, you can get a really nice ult, but there's still a Hunbats and a Cthulhu on the other side, plus the ult forward from Neil. I think showcased how aggressive that team is willing to play and willing to get. And on the other side, the Warriors showcase that, yes, Nika can lead the way, but if everybody else is getting CC'd because Pagon makes a sick transformation, the fight's going to be continually lopsided.
These are going to be some hard fights for both the Jade Dragons and Oni Warriors to weave their way through.
There's almost too much that's going to go on at some
Almost
points.
feels that way. Well, because, I mean, if you're focusing so much of your damage on Cthulhu, yeah, we'll be able to break it down a bit as the game goes on. Right now, the Oni Warriors want to take a bit of the wind in their sails over to the Pyromancer, but the Jade Dragons, the ones to pick it back up, with the help of Scream, will shred it down somewhat quietly. So the Oni Warriors not wanting to really roll those dice a second time, especially not for a Pyromancer. Gives a bit of gold back to the Jade Dragons.
Yeah.
As Billy showed us a moment ago, it was a pretty healthy 3,000-4,000 gold lead earlier in this game, Gore. Drops down to about 2,000 on a nice play from the Oni Warriors in the last minute or so. Final K is a farming machine, my goodness. 745 XP per minute.
It's a lot.
That's ridiculous.
Not only that, I believe he's 2 levels up on Nika. He's hit 20 at this point.
Oh
Nika,
my God.
is 18, so
That
a
just caught my eye.
very
You don't normally see that.
insane amount of farming coming down from Final K. And some of that, I mean, has to do with, look at who died on this team, right? Pagon, PBM, Panda died in the last engagement. And while Cuvo and Dardes were dead, I mean, yeah, you can't go for the big neutral objective, but everything else was just free, right? Wide open. Nika was having to tank for vote over on the Fury. I think well played. Plus 2 kills. Able to get one of those earlier on, but one in that last engagement. I think that seeing this farm has really enabled this AMA. But it's what can you do with this, right? Like, you know, you've got the 2-level lead. Where you place this pressure, where you can turn it into something bigger for your team is going to be massive. And I love this kind of call because AMA helps shred objectives.
FG is the answer. Fear no evil is the reply.
No way!
The Oni Warriors, oh no, they steal it from under the nose of the Jade Dragons. Now with red in their eyes, the Jade Dragons want to walk back in and fight, but they might not be able to do so. Wild Hunt gets nothing, less than nothing. Instead, it actually baits in Final K, who's forced to dash out. And the Oni Warriors steal away the objective from the Jade Dragons. Another coin flip objective that doesn't pay off.
They have shred for days. They can kill a fire giant insanely fast if you're the Dragons. All it takes is one person on the Warriors to be nearby, and it becomes a 50-50. Yes, you've got burn, you're going to get it low, but the highest damaging ability that you can see, I mean, we saw it earlier around the Fury, was like 400, I think, from Pagon. And you can see little moments that are nice for the Dragons, but that one just feels like it is relying so heavily on Pagon's transformation and ult from as a Hunbats. And unfortunate for them, it falls apart. Well played by the Warriors to get that objective, kind of read the scenario and recognize that they're going to be able to continue that aggression. Yeah. And then it ends up going even more in their favor because, as you called out, the Wild Hunt was thrown onto a giant Cthulhu and Nika just walks away. Like
what if you could polymorph him into a giant pig or whatever?
A giant pig.
I would love that. Unfortunately, not how it works.
If that did happen that way, he'd have to have one ability that was trample, and it would just like trimble anybody beneath him because he's a giant pig.
Yeah, I wish. Unfortunately, not how it works out. But
no, he just stays big Cthulhu.
Just stays big Cthulhu. So Towers now gonna give some gold back to the Oni Warriors, who have officially pulled ahead of the Jade Dragons at the 23-minute mark.
And for good reason.
For the first time this game. It has been interesting where the Dragons have felt very in control outside of a Fire Giant steal around the neutral objective score. But fight-wise, team fight-wise, Oni Warriors have, you know, even if it's only been one extra person, you know, in the big grouped up fights, it feels like the Oni Warriors have had a real good shout at it over the last couple of scraps.
Well, they've got a really good composition for team fights just in general, right? Like, when you look at the front line, you've got some healing, really good CC, in my opinion, from a Horus that is really going to help your team. The knock-up, the prot shred feels really good on a single target. Nika helps deal and CC control multiple targets, especially with Descent to Madness. And then you factor in Fear No Evil. That's really, really good in the middle of a team fight, but Cuvo's also decent at diving, so can get to Panda Cat or to Pagon pretty consistently. Dardes, really good at diving because he's playing a Raven, so can get to Pagon, Panda Cat really consistently. And then Vote just gets to play Vote.
Yeah, Mike's reaction is about all you can do there. He throws up his hand. He's like, all right, I'm done for. Gets CC'd on cooldown. And no chance for Mike to get out. Oni Warriors add a kill onto Mike and add a Primal Fury for themselves as well. And actually might end up making this siege a bit easier for the Oni Warriors. Now the Dragons doing about the only thing they can do. Let's split push out some of the rest of this map. We're not defending our left side tier 2 anyway. So the Dragons knock down mid tier 1, knock down right tier 1, maximize what they can do in this downtime.
And I like it just because you know you're going to be losing a lot anyway. And like you said, you've got to be able to salvage some of it. You're going to get 1,500 gold while the Warriors pick up 3 times that in minimum from the tier 2s that they were just able to swing through. Every tower gone on the Dragon side of the map, so not only is it a massive gold infusion for the Warriors, it is something that helps kind of equalize. But you had mentioned it earlier, the Warriors being at such a deficit prior to the FG steal means that after all of that, they're still, I mean, it's within a 300 swing, but like,
Is that true?
still technically behind the Dragons because of those towers. And, you know, Pyromancer comes into the equation. You have to talk about that. The Fury maybe being a nice little equator for these two teams to fight over. But the next Fire Giant is maybe the most important just because what was a Dragon's lead into a 50-50 coin toss that unfortunately falls the other way. Now, the whole game feels 50-50 between these two.
Flip. Yeah, you wonder where the momentum might land after a game 1 win. You guys didn't see it. The desk was talking about how this one might go 3, and Mike kind of jokingly gave me a smirk and shook his head no. We've heard plenty of teams answer. It's either we're winning game 1 or we're losing them both, you know? Teams destined to sweep one way or another. What is Panda Cat building into here? That's caught my eye. One of the shield items laid on in the build here. Wants physical powers, physical prots. Interesting. In the aura that reduces prots of enemies around him. Maybe he's assuming he's going to be getting dove on by Nika, by Neoma, and wants some value out of it.
Well, and when you're looking at it, like you said, with the passive, it's specifically encompassing that with an Xe, with a Chin size, like all of a sudden, you're really eating through physical prots on the other team, and you're doing it fast. When you look, I mean, there's a Height of the Nemean picked up for Nika, right? This is a build that is going to kill a Cthulhu, probably kill a Horus as well, if Panda Cat is able to withstand a lot of that initial damage, and giving yourself a couple of prots as well, making sure that these assassins that are diving aren't going to be able to find as much success is going to be huge.
And here we go. We're fighting on the backside of the Fire Giant pit, but it's FineOK and Scream who have found Neoma in the back line. A fantastic start for the Jade Dragons, but it's answered in kind as Mike has lost his life. But Scream still lives, and he's got another in this fight. A Fear No Evil through, this time from Cubo Fred. It's trapped FineOK, and a Fields of Love from Vote will rally the Oni Warriors forward once again. Panda Cat on the back end of this fight has given the Jade Dragons their advantage. And could
Scream.
again, once more, Scream will catch the back. And it's all but a deicide for the Jade Dragons. A big fight for the Osiris.
Yeah, the Cthulhu can't do much. I mean, if you stand in front of Panda Cat, even without Pagon, Panda Cat probably comes out on top. The amount of damage that he's going to be able to do is just going to be too massive to Nika alone. So they have to play that carefully. You still lose a couple if you're the Dragons. But the way things are staggered out, especially with Vote dying about 10 seconds behind Cuvo, you could probably start this Fire Giant before the Warriors are full strength. Get it on now to Mike, who's respawned, but also get it on to FineOK right as he spawns in.
That's right, and Fino, if necessary, can teleport right back into this fight. We've already seen one Fire Giant steal. Will we see a second? It's going to be Neoma. It's going to be Nika. Tossing the coin. They will not, though it was close. That mire right next to where the FG is. And the Jade Dragons flip the script from what we've seen all game long. They win a big team fight. Get the Fire Giant on everyone but FineOK, who was just a second too short.
And at that point, it was, we have to secure this or they're
we're
going to
getting
steal
this
it,
for
right?
sure.
Like, it is we could have held it for you, but we'd probably have lost it, and it's not going to be worthwhile. The Warriors get that. Maybe it's just a giant pause button on the game, but more than likely they're going to be able to get aggressive, and you're starting to look at Phoenixes. The real downside for either of the squads when you look at that Fire Giant is just the fact that it falls at 29-15 or whatever. And so you don't quite have that enhanced property. If you're the Dragons, you're going to be able to use this now with the fully realized, there it is, Void Shield. That was the pickup there for Panda Cat. You're going to be able to utilize all of this to knock down the last tier 2s that the Warriors have built up. The Oni Fury is going to help give you some pressure. Should be able to look at a Phoenix here. Still going to be difficult again because it's not enhanced, but it does open that topic of discussion for you. Unfortunately, the defense for the Warriors is still really solid.
Yeah.
Just like on merits alone that there's a Cthulhu, that's really all you need to know half the time to make a defense around the Phoenix that's going to work. I mean, Myers just such a massive ability, as illustrated perfectly there by Nika. And that's not even including Descent into Madness, not including the Fear No Evil that's going to exist on the other side. A lot that the Warriors are going to be able to do to defend the Phoenix if there's a misstep from the Dragons. So instead, I full and wholeheartedly endorse this. You need some sort of lead. You need something to separate you from the Warriors if you're the Dragons. Knock down every tier 2. Map state will be equal at that point, but because you're getting these much later in the game and just because of the way that the farm has been going up to this point, you're now ahead of where the Warriors were. Able to go back. Most of the items are kind of matched on either side anyway, so you're really looking at this, itemization formulating there and the relics being fully upgraded. Now for the Dragons, you're probably going to see some potions, if not just a lot of wards that are going to make a lot of differences for these squads in order to enable things. And on a rare choice, I mean, we already have upgraded starters, so I doubt we'll see this, but the potential to sell and buy kind of existing in the back of their mind, if need be, for the Dragons. Otherwise, I'm looking at them pretty much fully empowered. Ferocious Executioner just now finished for Panda Cat. So you're getting a large power spike, especially with a Potion of Power. And a ton of Vision, which isn't going to be as important now, because it doesn't feel like in the minute they're going to be able to fully stress out a Phoenix. This next Fire Giant's enhanced, so the Dragons are going to have a distinct advantage going into that engagement.
Hurry one. Panda Cat able to finish up his Void Shield, which, I look at who that's been affecting. Hugo Fred has had some decent fights. Dardes, I think, has really struggled to finish off some of those kills in the way that you hope an assassin mid is able to do it. 1, 3, and 4. Technically lower half of the player damage charts, just beneath it, just beneath that pivot point by 3 damage, by the way. He's behind Scream to get to the top half. Dardes, I think, sure, the dive onto Panda Cat specifically maybe has been affected, but really in the team fight in general, I don't think I've seen a big Mystic rush in target deletion yet this game. Maybe what he's hoping to do.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I feel like we've seen him get deep a couple of times, but the last one I'm remembering was between him and Nika, both engaged. It was right around the FG, and Dardes ate 90% of his health bar in like 3 seconds, if not less.
Right.
I mean, almost instantaneously deleted from the engagement. And that was with the mitigations being factored in. It just did not matter from the Dragons with the amount of damage they were able to do. So it does feel like it's this awkward middle ground where you want to be the one diving and helping peel for your team, set up team fight kills, and specifically putting Pagon, Panda Cat into an uncomfortable position, but you're just not able to because the way they've itemized both of them and the way that the Dragons are playing kind of punishes you specifically if you're Dardes to jump in. You're not going to be able to deal with a lot of them. They're doing really well as a team and grouping up. And I think the Dragons are going to be able to control at least the mid lane pick. Maybe later on we'll see that big moment, like you said, like you would want if you're Dardes, where Cuvo gets them all really low with the help of Nika and Vote, and then Dardes gets to leap in and find a double kill, triple kill, something like that. But so far, it just has, in general, left me wanting. I mean, 1, 3, and 4 is not terrible. 1, 2, and 4 is what you're going up against from Pagon. And it just feels like the Morrigan, especially with the transformations, has been offering way more to the team overall.
Yeah, a bit more. Even still, Kivo Fred, lower on the damage charts from what we've seen from Dardes. Now, that said, you're looking at 2 bubbles a team right now that need popping, and so wherever that initial Fear No Evil lands, that could be good at shredding off some bubbles. But that's maybe exactly what the Jade Dragons have bought those items for. Then plenty of beads on the back end of that. It's always the conversation, Gorv, like, all right, who's burning these beads? Specifically with Fear No Evil, right? I mean, you drop it, great, that burns beads. Then where's the follow up? You've got a bit from Nika, a bit from Neoma, a bit from Vote, a bit from Dardes. It's these little instances. I think that's where my mind goes going into this next fight. 2 bubbles, 1 for Pagon, 1 for Mike. and everyone but Mike having beads, can you get some of that defensive utility offline if you're the Oni Warriors?
I think a lot of that pressure falls onto Cuvo immediately, right? Fear No Evil, really good at burning beads. Ideally, you're not the one who has to, though, because you'd like it if your CC was the one that was landing and hitting them the hardest. But there's not a lot of other options. I mean, I guess a Fields of Love, if it pops in time, could really lock things down, but that's such a very specific, yes, this is going to end up working out for us, that I just don't see it happening for Vote. Neil, single target most of the time. I mean, technically your knock-up can hit as many as it wants, but it's so short range, so close to your body, that the likelihood of hitting 2 people, or God forbid even more, is so low. And so Nika comes into the equation. You know, you need a little bit more assistance, I think, if you're Cuvo. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot to try and make that happen. So it's going to be your Fear No Evil that burns those objectives, or burns those relics more than anything.
Every relic in the game ready to go. Every ultimate ready to go as well. We are also rearing for a fight. Cuvo Fred has dropped his Fear No Evil into the backline, but I'm not sure he's found much. Instead, now it's Nika forcing forward with the rest of his team. And the Oni Warriors rally behind the Cthulhu. Vote swinging damage. And Vote has added another as well. It's only Cuvo Fred who's down. Suddenly Darda has a bit more space to operate. But Gore, the Oni Warriors have dropped the fight and turned their eyes to the FG.
They are able to pick up at least one, like you said, with Cuvo going down. But the zone, especially the health bars on the side of the Dragons, make this maybe one of the easiest calls that they're going to have. Nothing the Dragons are going to be able to do here. Even if Pagon was able to come back in with full health, you know, no ult, you're not really going to get anything with the base Morgan kit. Terra might be able to, Scream might be able to. But again, without ults, it feels like it's going to be a long shot for the Dragons anyway. So now you get a Fire Giant if you're the Warriors. It's enhanced. And you're still in a 3v5 for 20 seconds, 10 more, at least until Panda Cat comes back. It should be a really easy Phoenix.
Nika's fine for now, but yes, you can play more aggressive. You have teleport. If you go in, you lose too much of your HP, just teleport back into lane.
Yeah.
I was wondering if the Oni Warriors would then immediately send it to mid. Panda Cat immediately coming back up, though, makes that a bit of a scary prospect. Massive swing now. Map state going into that Fire Giant fight was equal. Gold was heavily in favor of the Jade Dragons, but we're all full build here, so you're talking about upgraded relics and power potions, things like that. Now the big map state swing for the Oni Warriors after what was a dropped fight from the Dragons.
I am enjoying the pickups that we're starting to see from the Dragons, though, to help combat a couple of things. And it's something that I don't personally think of too often, but realistically it has been on the rise, because we talk about the Terra healing. We talked about, you know, Kernanos, his inbuilt kit healing, plus the lifesteal in the build. You got to look at Amma having inbuilt healing. But Horus brings healing, Raven's got healing, Cthulhu's got healing for the team, Cupid healing for the team. I really do like what the Warriors have been able to do, which has been enable themselves, heal themselves, a lot of it really good in-combat healing. So now we're seeing 2 Toxic Blades, 1 for Fine OK, 1 for Scream. That's going to make things a little easier for them. You do have an upgraded Ankh coming out of Mike. Divine Ruin's already online. But knowing that it's a little more limited in terms of the anti-heal over there, I think is going to slow the Warriors there, maybe slow the Dragons down a little bit in terms of their fight back. And of course, they're currently experiencing the most awkward part, which is we're not fighting into an EFG and definitely not neutral territory. So they just got to wait while the Warriors come to the base.
Trebuchet, though, started up by the Jade Dragons. That'll help for a bit more of that ranged clear. And now an important timing note here, 1 minute and 45 or so seconds left. Fire minions haven't made it into the base of the Jade Dragons just yet, but a couple of waves will start to waltz their way in towards the Titan here eventually. And that'll likely force someone from the Jade Dragons to head back and deal with it. Because remember, a win condition easily is, all right, Fire minions have dealt so much damage to the Titan, let's just ignore the Phoenix, let's go in, let's end the game. And so right now, the Dragons aren't under threat of that, but two Fire Minion waves about to stack up. If they make their way to the Titan uncontested, it'll open up a win condition. The Oni Warriors pinging the same thing. Now is the time to go. My goodness, Pagon's got to transform immediately. And in he goes. What's happened to Fine OK? It's Vote on the back line. who has melted down Amaterasu. Now Cubo Fred senses an opening, but he shouldn't have. The door is closed. You're not welcome here. And Cubo Fred repelled, and the left side Phoenix still stands.
You gotta talk about what you mentioned earlier. Screams had to break off to deal with fire minions. PBM is incredibly low. And so while that was, to a certain point, a really solid Phoenix defense for the Dragons, Warriors still get a Phoenix because they have the EFG, because they have as much pressure as they had, and specifically force 2 of your players to fall back to help deal with the pressure they've caused elsewhere. It opens up the Phoenix. Now you're talking about 20 seconds on the power play. I like this call. Fall back. There's a Fury up for you to take. Some jungle camps for you to strip away. Go ahead and grab those. And then set yourselves on the right paths. We're talking final upgrades for some of their relics that are on the horizon for the Warriors. Which at this point, you're looking at really helpful cooldowns, really helpful passives as they get some of those upgrades. And I'm also going to again bring attention to the amount of wards that are probably going to show up in the Warriors. The vision coverage on a Fire Giant pit going into a 40-some-odd minute enhanced Fire Giant at that is going to be incredibly important for the entire squad. And a lot of that should be true on the Dragons as well. I can see some sentries already locked in, but the coverage around this pit, stripping vision away from the Warriors, or vice versa, the Warriors stripping it from the Dragons. Neither of these teams have great secure, so it is still 50-50 at the end of the day. The Dragons have just as much of a chance for a steal as the Warriors do. Also, blows my mind that their 2 Phoenixes down, technically Wright has respawned, and yet they still have the gold lead.
They have just not fallen behind.
And they just lost a gold Fury at 40 minutes of the game.
The Oni Warriors on their first Fire Giant lost like 150 gold somehow. It was crazy. It's that little dip down right in between the 21 and 31 minute mark where somehow the Oni Warriors didn't build up too heavily. But now the fighting's happening right as the Fire Giant is spawned. It's the Frenzy out and the Fear No Evil's exchanged, but as we have so often seen, it's Nika and Dardes into the backline, but Pagon's got a great answer. And we'll turn around the kill onto Dardes, and maybe even one more on Anika. The Jade Dragons might not have map state, but they've got teamfight presence in spades. And again, the Oni Warriors will be repelled, this time with nothing to show for it.
And again, crucial kills and chase down at this point. I mean, Fine OK at this point is just running around the world. Mike should be able to help find a stun or root, something that's going to lock down Neil. Otherwise, I mean, Neil's buying time. Look, this guy is dead to rights.
No.
But he bought about 20 more seconds than maybe needed for the team. And that's 20 seconds that the Dragons weren't doing a Fire Giant, 20 seconds that they weren't pushing an objective.
Should be able to get Phoenix. I guess you don't have Panda.
Yeah, you lose a lot of your burn without Panda.
But...
And that just goes true for Phoenixes too, apparently.
But this body language is going to tell us a lot. And it was a pump fake in towards the Titan and then turn around and head back out. Especially with Vote coming up in 5 seconds, Panda Cat being dead. The Jade Dragons keep us going at least one more time. There's something about 40-plus minute games over these last 2 days. Especially when it's as important as this one is. I'll remind you, Jade Dragons 1 win ahead in the standings as of now. But the Oni Warriors beat them earlier on in the phase. And so if the Oni Warriors were to win here, they'd be tied in wins, but the Oni Warriors would have the head-to-head advantage.
Yeah.
And top 2 is what you're hoping for. 1 set away if you're top 2 in Phase 3 playoffs from automatically going to the Phase 3 finals. No, SMITE World Championship quarterfinals early on, mid in January. So some weight building up now in this set, and we've gone back and forth all set long, Gore. All game number 1 long. The left side Phoenix is respawned. Fine OK, split pushing out that last Fire Minion wave. He's got teleport. And there's your last big advantage for the Oni Warriors. We're going to have to deal with the Fire Minions against them in the mid lane.
And if I'm remembering correctly, coming into the last couple of weeks, like 45 minutes was one of the longest games we had this year, which is surprising because normally we break 50 at least once, right? I think we had in Season 7, maybe in Season 8 as well, a couple that went over 60. And if I remember, I think 76 something is the longest ever.
Just vote. Does Vote know that Fino's behind him? Oh, he does now! And he's learned the hard way because Fino K has completed a chase down, but Dardes gets an early kill on a screen. We haven't seen that in any of these fights yet. Fino K wraps around Vote with another one. Panda Cat kills off Dardes. Nika's got to go massive on this Cthulhu. Neomon and Cuvo Fred have to get away because the Oni Warriors have lost their carries, and Gore the Jade Dragon's looking for the Titan.
And at this point, there's no reason to really slow down outside of you don't have the Fire Giant. You need a little bit of assistance, but you got Fire Minions in mid, and you've got a numbers advantage. Cuvo doesn't have ult, Neil doesn't have ult, Nika doesn't have ult. This should just be a go button for the Dragons.
Jade Dragons, they want to end this game now, and the Oni Warriors with their tanks are going to have to keep it alive. Cuvo Fred, no fear, no evil. Can you kill off Panda Cat? That's where most of this damage is coming from. Pagon and Panda dash through, but Pagon gets rid of Cuvo Fred, and that's the damage the Oni Warriors had. They have no gas in the tank, and the Jade Dragons take game 1 in 45.
I mean, you called it exactly what it was. Not that fight, but the fight before, where the Dragons might not have had the map state advantage. They might not have had, or maybe they had a slight gold advantage, but they had the team fight, and they had it in spades. And it was that separation specifically, as you highlighted, Vote not knowing that Finoke had this really great loop around to the back of the fight, a really good pincer for the Dragons, locks him down, gets onto the carry immediately, and then all of a sudden you're in this position where it Vote's out of the fight. And if he's getting chased down, if he dies, which he ends up doing, no matter what, that's a win for the Dragons immediately because you can start jumping in, diving onto Dardes, diving into the jungle, and dealing with that. They force a lot of TKOs, force him to run back, and you've just got a mid-Phoenix, right? We were talking about it. We were looking at it. They didn't go for that Fire Giant after they got those fights. And so it was that opening of, if you go for the Fire Giant, maybe it leads to something bigger, but they've got good defense on the other side. Instead, break the base, give yourself that win condition, and then all it takes is one fight, and they create it, they manifest it over there on right, and they just run it down mid.
What a tug of war between the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors. Still more action to go. Game 2 between the Dragons and the Warriors right around the corner.
why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Can you feel me?
Game number 1 of our final set of the day starts out for the Jade Dragons as they find their advantage against the Oni Warriors. And all these games that are being played now are leading up to the playoffs. The playoffs lead to the SMITE World Championship. If you don't make it then, you got to go through all these other games. But besides just the play on field, there's actually another really cool thing that's going to be happening at the SWC, and that's our cosplay contest, the 9th annual cosplay contest. We're taking place at SWC. Compete for a prize pool of $9,000. So if you're a cosplayer, we got all different levels of entry and experience out there. So if you think you've got what it takes to earn some of the money out there, go ahead and enter into the cosplay contest. I'll just put a little bit of bias out there. If you're an Opwash cosplayer, I'll be first in line to say, hey, I want to get a picture with you, but also you get my vote in that regard. Dave threw it over there for Thor. I'm going to throw it for the Outposh ones just because there's some
votes.
I think we do. I'm not 100%. If we do specifically, I'll give you at least my sentimental thumbs up and really good job. But
I want there to be like an American Idol like booth, and I'm
Like-
gonna Simon Cowell it up.
Like we just put like all the casters and everything around there, and we just give our vote, and we're the only ones to determine
It could also just be me. Like it doesn't have to be all of us.
Okay,
like-
so just Mifflin to determine there. But anyways, at least for game number 1 here, Jade Dragons find the win over the Oni Warriors. And Mifflin, this one really feels like we can kind of almost ignore like the first 30 minutes or so of this game, because it feels like once these games start pushing in towards 40, 45 minutes and whatnot, kind of the early game can go a little bit out the window there. It really felt like whichever team was getting the Fire Giant post 30 minutes was the team winning the team fights. They were the ones pushing down enemy bases. But in these last few team fights specifically, it felt like if Scream could make it to the back line, the Dragons were winning. If Scream couldn't, then the Oni Warriors were.
I mean, on base defense, Scream sat in his own back line, and the enemies came to him for him to 1v1, right? But I'm glad that you said that we can ignore the first 20 minutes. But I think that it is worth noting the Oni Warriors probably should have been pushing harder in the first 20, and that's why the game goes as long as it does. Otherwise, the Jade Dragons would probably have to deal with a little bit more separation towards these base defenses. Otherwise, I think you're right. This came down to play on field, and this time around, the Jade Dragons just had better opportunities. Felt like at times Pagon was getting the better end of the Cthulhu matchup, and that's what it was. It was the Cthulhu matchup. Just able to separate those fights a little bit better than Nika on the other side. Scream is going to single-handedly bring Osiris back into the meta. Not exactly looking forward to that, but if that's what he's going to do, it's what he's going to do. And the Jade Dragons prove once more that they can play these later game matches, and even from behind as well. I mean, a couple of base defenses, the Jade Dragons just go so well, and they're able to fight their way back in.
Yeah, Final K coming up big on this Amaterasu, going for essentially just full physical defense. Kind of got to ignore the Cthulhu because it really felt like Nika on the Cthulhu never was hitting Final K once I got out of the laning phase there. We'll see if things do change up, though, for the Picks and Bans in game number 2. I did like the double assassin idea coming out of the Oni Wars. I think you're right to say that maybe push that a little bit earlier through, but I don't know how much I kind of feel about the Raven Hunbat combo as the assassins. I mean, we took a peek about 25, 30 minutes in, and it really felt like both those assassins were right at the middle of the pack in damage, or maybe even further below that.
Yeah, I would have liked one of the two assassins to be like a hyper carry style assassin. Things like Susano or Set come to mind, but Dardes has gone on record in saying that he doesn't exactly like to play Set, and junglers, for the most part, also just straight up don't like to play Set because his ganks are really hard to execute on. Not having any form of like traditional hard CC means that you haven't really got a way to set up these ganks yourself, and you're more reliant on whichever lane partner you're walking in towards. So junglers don't want it. Dardes doesn't want it. I think that essentially can be translated to the Oni Warriors don't want it. The Jade Dragons, though, do want themselves a CERN, get themselves a bit more pressure yet again in that first pick selection, a little bit of AoE CC as well, and just a great solid pick.
With the Cernos locked in, that leaves the Cthulhu one more time for the Oni Warriors. I believe the same bands minus instead of a Tsukuyomi that the Dragons banned in game number 1. It's a Cupid in that place, but the Oni Warriors are not going to give the Morgan over to Pagon this time. That one will go over to Dardes in the mid lane. And kind of talking about this Cernos, and maybe the build of Panda Cat was a little bit of a strange one. 6th item Void Shield came out from him to try and deal with some of these frontliners that he was constantly having to face tank against.
It was 4 Fizz and a single damage item Cthulhu. I'd have bought a mid guard, man. I mean, props to Panda Cat for saying I need at least a little bit of damage from my items. But yeah, I think that one was just a good pickup to deal with the dive potential the Oni Warriors had got. But the Oni Warriors have made adaptations. Previously, it was Cthulhu plus, what was it, Cupid in that slot last time. So this time it's, hey, we want the double Cthulhu combo. We're going to go ahead and make sure we get it for ourselves. So Morgan flanks it this time around. Jade Dragons don't need to shift things up just yet. Well, they do, because it was Morgan in this slot. But Osiris locked in for them, and I'm not going to argue against it. Scream can get active very early. Gets a whole lot of mitigations just from the kit itself. And, well, the Chop Chop does that. It chops. Chop.
Chop, chop.
That's right.
Banned away in game 1 was the Camazotz, now picked up for the Jade Dragons because they couldn't grab the Morgan in that slot. And then they'll combo the Morgan with a Raven, so you have some good early game double gank potential with a double Raven out there, or if you want to have some late game defense, have that second Cthulhu available to the Morgan. So 2 great options already. Even Camazotz kind of pumping itself as a maybe option for the Morgan. Seems that Dardes has the pick of the litter as far as his options are concerned. And as we jump into the first wave, or the second wave of
it's
bans,
Morgan,
I should
right?
say. What?
It was Morgan for Dardes.
Morgan for Dardes, yeah.
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 Oh, pick of the litter for
Pick of the
transformations.
for
I was
transformations
like,
on
you
there.
must be privy to something I don't know. If that
Yeah,
Morgan's
that's-
not going mid, I'm freaking
Yeah,
out.
that one's secretly going to vote. You know, they
I
talk,
sure
to, me, they
hope
talk
not.
to me between the games. They're like, yeah, Vote's really been wanting to play this Morgan. But no, Dardes over for the Morgan. A lot of great transformation tools available to him. And then second wave of bans, Terra and Chernobog. Maybe the questionable one there, banned away by the Jade Dragons.
Global presence, I suppose, a concern for the Jade Dragons here. Surprised to see Chernobog banned out. Haven't seen a whole lot of picks on that god in general. Maybe the only Warrior's been cooking something up in scrims recently, or concerned about taking fights near the soul lane that Chernobog can get involved in if you want to play around your Cthulhu early on. Couldn't exactly tell you what exactly Chernobog is threatening to the Jade Dragons besides that global presence, so I'm going to stick with it. And the only Warriors are like, yeah, you're right, globals are good. Ban Athena.
Yeah, ban Smithina. I mean, I'm looking back at Vote's last 6 games. It's 3 Cupids and on her and Ishtar. So, I don't know, maybe an Ishtar ban? Nope, no Ishtar ban. It's a Ganesh instead. For the Jade Dragons, focusing out Neil Moss, so Neil will have to dig a little bit further into his god pool with Kabrakan, Ganesh, Athena, Ymir, and Yamoja all banned away for the time being as far as support potentials come out there. But with this pick over to the Only Warriors, like I said, Ishtar's available if they want to go with another Hunter. Ishtar's been performing fairly well, and just about any team that's been able to pick that one up, whether that goes in towards the mid or the duo lane. So we'll see where the Only Warriors do go with their Hunter pick.
Yeah, it could be Ishtar, could be maybe an on her because we're talking about the Oni Warriors. We'll have to hold out on it. Horus locked in. A little bit of global presence once more. Seems to be the name of the game here for the Oni Warriors. And the ability to transport not just 1, but 2 Cthulhus directly to a backline, I think could be valuable for the Oni Warriors in some of these later game team fights. I like this, though, from the Jade Dragons. Artio is a lock-in. Could just walk down the Cthulhu, make sure he isn't allowed to dash in to initiate. If you're sticking to him well, keep him in combat. Those blinks won't be able to get through either. And just generally being able to play a lane bully that brings you some in-combat healing, I think, for the Jade Dragons. Going to go very well for them. It is another Quadra physical draft, this time for the Jade Dragons, though, and a bit lacking in confirmable CC. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, but Set doesn't really have any like stuns or knockups. Camazot's not your traditional frontliner that's going to start your fight for you. Osiris, sure, he's going to stand in there, but it takes a real long time for that tether to apply a stun. How often do we see Wild Hunt like actually find value for the polymorph? Seldom, I'd say. So it really is just up to Artio, and I mean the roar is pretty tiny.
Man, it feels like a Heavenly or maybe a couple of Wing Blades could go such a good distance for the Oni Warriors because Set slow with the Skewer, Camazot's slow with the Bats, Osiris slow with his combo and a stun. RDO also kind of throwing a little bit of slows there. Feels like that could maybe be a great option for the Oni Warriors to pick up for themselves. Ishtar being hovered for the hunter of choice, and it will be the selection for vote. So he'll get to get a third game of that into his board to make his last 6 now a 50-50 between Cupid and Ishtar.
Yeah, I mean, Ishtar fits really well into this draft. A hunter that's got a good deal of self-peel with that ultimate, the ability to dash out or just immune a lot with the dash leap once you hit an enemy. So I like what Ishtar brings to this draft because for the most part, Ishtar is going to be operating on an island. Double Cthulhu, W key, Raven right there with them, Horus right there with them, Ishtar from downtown, sending out some snipes from literally max range is how I predict these team fights are going to go for the Oni Warriors. Whereas the Jade Dragons, everybody's diving, I guess, except for CERN. I mean, it's the exact same style, but one side's got Double Cthulhu and the other side's got no CC.
Now, when we always talk about these double Cthulhu compositions, the name of the game has always been kin size. You get maybe a couple hunters that pop the kin size, maybe get some soul reavers, some heart seekers out there. Aside from the CERN, which I assume the kin size will be in the build, are there any other answers for the Jade Dragons to maybe try and deal with that, or do you just hope that you have enough damage output to kill the Cthulhus before they become a problem?
Well, I'm sure Scream's going to buy a kin size, so that's one more. The Chop Chop do just that, so sticking to a Cthulhu probably not the best use of Scream's time in particular. He'd much prefer to like try and isolate the Morgan while it still is the Morgan instead of Cthulhu 2 or take some 1v1s up against Raven, but I'm concerned, man. The Jade Dragons draft, the late game team fight, the absolute latest portions of the game, I'm just not sure how that's going to line up in the 5-on-5. Like, I'm putting myself in player brain, and if I'm on the Jade Dragons as their jungler, I'm like, man, I don't have any great targets like 30 minutes in. And if I'm on the Oni Warriors, I'm like, man, they got no CC. I'm going to walk them down while descended into madness. It just seems like the Oni Warriors, to me personally, have come out a bit ahead on this draft.
And I think maybe that wonder and hesitation is warranted because, I mean, if you look at the very first set of the day, almost every single one of these games is going 35-plus minutes. That was between the Leviathans and the Scarabs. You had our last game right there that just went 45 whatnot minutes in that one. Even some of our previous sets throughout the week are going these very long games. So trying to evaluate it to that late game is probably maybe the fairest way to assess it. So for the Jade Dragons to maybe avoid that late game, is this a team that has to kind of hit the ground running as quick as possible and try and get that early lead?
Anytime Scream's on an Osiris, you are trying to hit the ground running. That is a god that gets involved at level 1 and doesn't stop until someone stops him, and it's pretty hard to do that, clearly, based on his last couple of performances on this pick. I'd say yes, though. I'd really like to see the Jade Dragons control early. That's got to be their win con.
We'll see if the Dragons can do just that and bring themselves a 2-0, or the Oni Warriors taking it to 3. We'll throw it over to Dulcet and Gormizer for Game 2.
That's right, the battle for second seed heats up a bit here in Game 2. As the Oni Warriors beat the Dragons earlier on this phase, the Dragons want sole possession of second seed and do not want to look back. Because we're really getting down to it, Gore. After this weekend is over, most teams have like 2 or 3 sets remaining and the rest of the phase in its entirety. And you're talking about 2 or 3 sets separating a lot of the really impact spots. This is a big one for the Jade Dragons to really re-solidify themselves after running into a really tough Leviathan squad the last time we saw them. And what a way to do it. They give Pagon set mid. Not something we often get to see, but knowing this Dragon's play style, I have to imagine it fits.
Yeah, wants to get aggressive early on, wants to control things early on.
He got it.
And you don't want to be losing your objectives early on. You had 2 people, Dardes and Vote were there. And Mike is able to steal that, plus Panda Cat secures their own.
Where's...
And Neil, I mean, Neil's been over here getting
I was
bullied.
going to say, where's Neil? Neil's invading the other purple.
That hasn't been going well.
And because he has Hog, didn't use it on their own purple, obviously, because he wasn't there. And Mike is going to be able to go back and pick up the purple that he stole.
Yeah,
so
that's
Mike
just
got
unfortunate.
one of the littles and purple. Didn't see any of the littles that Panda Cat did or didn't get, but he gets the whole purple. Fantastic start for the Jade Dragons duo lane. And could be a good start for Scream. Hello, Scream's got Mannequin Scepter and a slow applied to Cuvo Fred. This would be a long shot at a kill, you'd imagine, or is it just a bit more damage? Flail drops down. And no, the sustain enough. Gore, you got up there. Cuvo Fred got down there. he is not happy. Hands go up. He's left running.
I can't believe that.
What a start for the Jade Dragons.
I genuinely can't believe that. I mean, it is an auto. It is a step. And I am absolutely an advocate for not diving a tier 2 anytime before like 7 minutes, but that. I'd have given him a double kill, man. I would have run so deep into that tower. I
Kilo
would
dodged the last bit of poke from Scream,
Yeah.
too. I mean, that makes a difference.
that one little duck right where he dodges out the sickle is amazing for him. And it really does help a lot, because if they lose that first blood, I'm talking about a game spiraling out of control
Yeah, already.
everywhere on the map, right? I mean, you've got to look at specifically for the Hunters, with the way the start went for the duo lane. Missing out on the purple buff if you're Vote, getting the red buff experience, but then missing out on some of the wave because you were so busy having to deal with PBM just being a nuisance. Meanwhile, Panda Cat got his purple, went to lane, got wave, has been farming up. As such, he's got a level lead, probably going to continue. That's going to matter around level 5 pretty heavily. But then if you get that kill onto Cuvo and you're the Dragons, not only does Scream get a first blood, which is absolutely, first off, something he was running the league in for the longest time this year. I'd have to double check if he's still doing it. But then on top of that, you now are losing some of the pressure that you could probably bring around to your duo lane to help them out. So it's important for Cuvo to stay alive there, just for the sake of trying to stabilize his team.
RDO is such a good look for Mike. Yeah, it just totally facilitates the type of play style that he wants. Didn't steal away this last purple, but gets the interceptor, zaps out a bit of damage, makes life difficult for the Oni Warriors. So the Oni Warriors lost their 2 littles on the last purple buff, but ultimately get the actual buff itself. So a slight deficit is what the Oni Warriors are dealing with over on the left side of the map. And maybe over in mid. I imagine Dardas will hit 5 shortly after this wave, or during this wave. But how about a double stun? How about a double wild hunt from Panda Cat? It's forced the beads off of Vote. For now, still feels worth it for the Jade Dragons on a blink in from PBM.
Yeah, I mean, you get the old, yeah, admittedly blink for beads, but beads for Vote are worth way more than everything that the Dragons expended there. So I think it feels solid. Although great play, I have to admit, from Vote, first off, to have such a fast reaction to deal with that, and from the rest of the squad there for him and Neil to be able to back off as well as they do. Just to keep them disengaged, keep things alive. And more, again, importantly at this point, afloat. Because it felt like a very explosive start for the Dragons, despite the fact that it was an explosive start for the Dragons. It's kind of stalled out at that start, right? Like nothing too crazy. In fact, Scream's actually behind Cuvo now, despite the fact that he almost got the kill earlier. So you're lacking a little bit in the jungle. You still have that lead over in the duo lane, but it hasn't been able to amount to too much. Maybe the next back, you know, with Panda Cat going here, I have to imagine getting the Devo's Gauntlet first is going to be nice for him. And he should be able to just outright afford that overvote for a while. So I expect that this is going to be somewhere that the Dragons might be able to lean on and maybe try to find some pressure now that they've got the item advantage over in duo.
So clear that Mike's primary goal is to just be annoying, stops Neil's back. Doesn't really change much, but, you know, just force him to channel it all the way up again. It's been a really nice start for the left side of the map. But to your point, Gore, has turned into a little gold, a little experience here or there, but has not catapulted the Jade Dragons that heavily forward. That said, there's only so much to fight over right now. A couple buffs here and there. Really not allowing Cubo Fred to get super active early in this game on the Robin. Maybe more surprisingly, after Scream found nearly a first blood onto Cubo Fred, has really pumped the brakes on his map pressure, though. Now that everyone in the game, except for Neilma level 5, opportunity does arrive yet again. Big dive in from Scream, big dive in with those ultimates from the junglers. Could open up to some gank opportunities.
Yeah, there's a large window. Honestly, I would think for the Raven. Maybe a little more than the Osiris. Just when it comes down to ganks, Raven very good at chasing people down, locking them up. Scream has a lot of similarities in the kit, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get aggressive. Feels like we didn't see too many, I want to say, traditional ganks from Scream last game on the Osiris, though. It was kind of walk in the lane, slow you down. If I can stun you, I'll stun you. If I can't, oh well, we'll see what we can do. But not a lot of the, I'm going to blink forward, see what we can get moments. Maybe that's going to be something we can see. He's hanging out on the left-hand side of the map with Mike playing as much of a nuisance as he has been. It could have been something more, although spotted by a
Whoa.
ward. Actually catches 2.
Oh, Scream dives in, but does Scream have the help? Yes, he does. It's Pagon rotating in from mid. The double skewer means a first kill. And there could be a second around the corner as well. Dardes dashing away. D-transforms, gets a stun onto Mike, and the skewer from Pagon not needed. A double kill on a double Lord of the Afterlife from Scream.
Incredibly played by that group. I mean, Scream jumping in there seemed absolutely asinine at first, right? I mean, you're jumping into 2 in the midst of the jungle.
Yep.
You know, you're doing well, but are you doing that well to fight a level 8 Morrigan? You had the help, though. Pagon comes over, and in a very good fashion has a lot of damage. I mean, that skewer 2 piercing onto Cuvo hits hard. And then, like you said, didn't necessarily need it to kill off Dardes. Has a lot of chase down, a little help from Mike as well to get the CC and the control necessary, as well as Screen pulling them into an awkward spot. It feels like the Warriors, in a very unfortunate scenario, just get caught out. And there's not many ways to describe that one other than just outplayed. I think that the Dragons read the map well and forced a scenario to happen that ended up favoring them incredibly.
Yeah, I wonder if this catapults Pagon forward now. You know, on the type of pick that Set can be. Start to chain together some kills. Have a nice 2-level lead in mid. My goodness, level 10 already. Dardes reaches level 9 just behind it, but miraculous start now. We wondered when the kills would start dropping for the Dragons. I mean, when you start the game in the way that they did, it's fantastic to get some gold spooling up, you know, put the dual lane a level behind here or there. Eventually, you got to expect the kills to drop, and just needed some itemization to back it up. Pagon now a massive threat here on this map, stacking up the Transcendence, 2 tiers in the second item. And I like this call here. Send Scream right around where Pagon is and see if you can get something going.
I like that Scream's still playing aggressively.
Yeah.
Just, again, to create scenarios. I mean, if you're over here with the Camazotz, we saw what you were able to do against Cuvo earlier. And from a small deficit now to a lead over Cuvo, Scream has been able to kind of turn the tide in the jungle. So I like seeing just the prevalence and the presence in the jungle, making sure that you're there for your squad. Especially if it enables Pagon to continue being Pagon. The double assassin didn't necessarily work out super well for the Warriors. There were moments where it had its greatness, but not a lot. I mean, we were even talking about Dardes on the Rothan last time not having a huge change.
This could be devastating for the Jade Dragons if they are slowed down. There's a few members of the Oni Warriors beginning to rotate their way left. Scream here as well. And it is a damage trade successful for the Oni Warriors, but enough backpedaling from Polar Bear Mike and Panda Cat means no full dive in. And Mike started that fight with a blink in on his own. And we start talking about diving in, getting into the back line. This Jade Dragons comp, Gort, it should be able to do it somewhat easily. You got the teleport in from Pagon, Lord of the Afterlife from Scream, fine okay with Bat Out of Hell. Mike wants to walk forward as well. Feels like Vote, and depending on where Dardes' transformation goes, the backline of the Oni Warriors, they might not have much to say about the Jade Dragons and diving the backline. Pandacat's got to be careful, but no. Should, maybe will back away from his purple. Slow goings, though. Ultimately nearly gets a kill onto Neilma, and the purple still stands. It's a solo defense on the purple buff here by Pandacat. Loses it, but not without some pressure. In goes Pagon. Under the double skewer onto Vote. We wondered when the set would swing, and a needed ult from Neilma to disengage.
Yeah, it barely gets them out of there, and honestly might not be out of there. Pagon, you have to remember you can teleport to those set clones. Very easy to close a gap, and it can cause a lot of distress. If he decided to jump in there, could have potentially tried to skewer as well. A lot of damage Pagon is able to dish out there. And it can be incredibly frightening. But yeah, I mean, you had kind of mentioned it, but Fine OK, Scream, Pagon, PBM with the way he's been playing, and admittedly the way the RDO is just in general. It's a lot of front line that the Dragons are going to have, a lot of dive that they're going to have as well. To the point where it feels like Vote is going to be sitting in the pocket with no worries, right? Because there's going to be so much happening in front of him that unless you get something crazy from Cuvo, probably not going to feel too pressured out. Pandacat is definitely still going to be in some trouble. I think there's going to be opportunities. But overall, his team is going to cause so much trouble for the Warriors.
Yeah.
He might just be able to free fire from the back line for a lot of those late game team fights.
Well, that so often happens, you know, where if everyone on the Jade Dragons is dive-minded, you know, you sometimes have the risk of just leaving the one guy who's not diving back alone, and he can just get jumped on by Cubo and Dardes. So it's going to require coordination for sure. You know, the only Warriors not off to a great start. Find themselves down about 3,000 or so gold. Voda's made this Ishtar look decent though in lane, despite, you know, get a bad start. Gets the purple buff stolen away. Unable to steal away the purple of the Jade Dragon, so it's been a, you know, 1-level deficit basically the entire laning phase. Feel like the AoE autos and some of the pressure that Ishtar can find, Voda's done a good job of leveraging a bit of that. Scream is over on left, double stun, double root, nearly a double wild hunt. But Neoma again has to ult defensively. Is it long enough this time? No, Cubo Fred is gonna get rooted in place, my God! Pagon has a mountain of damage, and he's dropped it on the Oni Warriors duo lane. Cubo Fred and Neoma wiped from the map, and call it a 4-0 start for the Jade Dragons rookie mid.
I mean, just absolutely insane what he's able to accomplish. And again, great setup from Mike. I mean, that route onto Cubo is like perfectly timed, perfectly gathered around the wall, and just sets it up for easy knockdowns. 2 people on this team have the 100% kill participation. It's going to be Scream with 4 assists and then 4 kills sitting on the back of Pagon. Does maybe paint a bit of a target on the back of his head. The Warriors being able to say, well, that guy's definitely a problem. Maybe we have to deal with him. But ultimately, it's all of them. I mean, you know, that fight doesn't happen, doesn't find success if it's not for PBM. Scream's getting super involved. The slow's incredibly helpful in making sure that the disengage for the Warriors isn't as good as it could be. And then, like you said, a mountain of damage coming from Pagon. That just helps things out. You know, you see 5,000 player damage. He's in the middle of the charts. That's 5,000 effective damage,
yeah,
though. It is all found something in comparison to the, admittedly, the 9K sat up there for Vote. A lot of poke, some of it being converted into kills for his team as well. But I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do, because if they're playing at this rate, I'm feeling bad for the Warriors.
Pagon hurts, man. I mean, Neil's going to get stunned here. I was expecting a double skewer around the wall and Neilma to have no health left. And that's what you remember we asked. It was 2 kills for Pagon early in the game. We were saying, I wonder, you know, so often the Jade Dragons and Pagon get off to this type of start on this type of pick, and they just end the game from that point on. And now another instance of a couple kills rolling for Pagon. He's a level and a half ahead. On the other side, Hunter 1v1. Vote just needs one more auto. He's been behind all laning phase, but I can't believe it. Panda Cat will get out, and Volt may actually end up dying. This would just be terrible for the Oni Warriors if Vote dies, but no, Mike not able to finish off the kill, but does get the beads away from the Ishtar. That is heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, just one hit in such an awkward spot, like just out of range.
Warriors needed that one.
And yeah, your movement getting you away there. That one, honestly, it's such a mental blow when you're this far down in terms of kills, also in terms of gold, and then you just watch one walk away from you, and there's not much you could have done. I mean, you know, Vote played it as well as he could. The only thing he could have done was have that blink rune that he just picked up 30 seconds earlier, which admittedly with the way the farm's been going would have just not happened, wouldn't have given him the kill. Now that kind of moment is going to be a lot more difficult to try and find the full lockdown. Panda Cat with blink and a dash. He's either going to get in with the rest of his team or he's going to be able to disengage in any scenario that he needs to get away from. But with this kind of lead, with the leverage that they have, admittedly still small advantages in some roles, bigger advantages in others, the Dragons are going to have to slow down a little bit, right? Like just by merits of the game, you're going to slow down. You've still got a lot of damage coming from Pagon, and I think he can be a late-game hyper carry for your squad. But Cthulhu's going to start being in the mix here, and until you've got some more, I want to say more directly targeted itemization, I think Nika's going to be a huge problem for him.
Vote, he's in some trouble here. Does not have beads now, he doesn't have his ultimate, but does have dash. Look out, Pagon rounding the corner. Sees vote rooted in place.
Oh my god.
And that's about all the damage Pagon needs. The left side of the map, from jungle to left, has been a graveyard. Nika just farming it up in solo, wondering what in the world has gone wrong. He's about to smack face first into a level 17 5-0 set at the next team fight. The Jade Dragons have leveraged this mid lane lead so effectively. So often you'll see a couple kills and they'll just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
No. The Jade Dragons have used it all over the map.
I'm starting to wonder if they're maybe trying to put them all on Pagon and it's like a mini game for them. Or if
Right.
he's just, A, just doing that much damage, but B, really, really prevalent in this team fight. Scream misses the ult there. I don't know that they can get something, but now with the CC, they might have enough damage.
Yeah, you got
Oh my
Pagon.
God.
Pagon, no, won't get his sixth. Instead, it's Scream this time. Doesn't matter. Pagon, another assist. Yeah, Gore, that's the amount of damage. And I wonder what Pagon goes here. I wonder if he gets Bloodforge and just tries to chain these kills together in a team fight. So he can't do any wrong. Pagon simply can't do any wrong right now. The way the build has gone, how strong he is, how far ahead he is in gold. I'm not sure anyone on the Oni Warriors is favoring their odds in a fight against Pagon. You have to try
Yeah.
to fight around it.
Right now, their saving grace is that this Oni Fury is going to spawn up, and Pagon was just on right, so they've got some room.
Dardes jumped on. Fine, okay. First opportunity to have a big impact on this game. We'll use Bat Out of Hell, and Dardes takes that as his exit cue. Oni Fury is up. Pagon is back. Fresh Bloodforge in the back pocket. These kills keep rolling. Oni Warriors keep dying. This could be a Jade Dragons 25-minute-er, a classic for the Jade Dragons and their play style.
And remember, in game one, we were talking about they can play late game. We got to see that. It goes 40 minutes. But the way they play the early game sometimes, when they can get off to a
9,000
roll,
gold ahead.
is exactly that, right? It is that wild, hey, we came in, we got a double kill to start things off in the jungle off a fight that kind of manifested out of nowhere. Just really good positioning from the Dragons and a good read to catch the Warriors off guard on a rotation in the jungle. And then you slowly siphon that, and it becomes 6 kills. Maybe doesn't seem like too much. 6 kills, 18 minutes, it's 1 every 3. It's not wild. But when it starts to manifest as a 10,000 gold lead, because every time they get one of those kills, sometimes even without getting those kills, they're getting TKOs, they're getting something on the map, invades, towers, anything that goes their way.
Oh, Scream's got to leave early into this fight. That's going to be the first kill of the game for the Oni Warriors. Where's Pagon? Where can the set find its opening? Off to the left and nowhere are the answers to those questions. So, a rare fumble now in game 2 for the Jade Dragons. They've lost their jungler. Maybe not respecting the pure lockdown and maybe the squishiness of this Osiris build. Does buy some breathing room for the Oni Warriors.
And these are the items I was waiting for. Chin size picked up there for Panda Cat. Would not be surprised if the same thing is about to fall there for Scream. Because I was worried about the Cthulhu coming into this, and I think we saw you can melt Nika. We watched it not too long ago. But we also just saw in the last engagement, Nika can survive long enough to at least get the damage out there for the rest of the team. Maybe Scream was a little too far forward. It kind of goes either way, but with the chin size pickup now on 2 people for the Dragons, makes it a lot easier to burn through Nika. And what I assume is about to be Nika's counterpart there in Dardes. Having 2 Cthulhus is going to be very problematic for the Dragons until they can deal with them, right? And it's helpful to have Pagon with the amount of damage that he's doing now. They upgraded there for the Hero's Axe. Feels like we're going to get to see a lot of the set continuing to push the boundaries. With the chin size locked in, I think the front line for the Warriors is going to be in a little more of a rough spot.
Gore, they were already in such a
Yeah.
I'm so scared for the Oni Warriors around this next fight. It's all about Pagon this game. Now, a lot of those kills have been set up, but Pagon has absolutely benefited. Skewers, I'm imagining big chunky damage onto basically anyone. As the Jade Dragons considering a 20-minute Fire Giant pull. Pagon hovering back. Yilma, where is this Horus going? Somewhere alone, away, alone is the answer. Thought he might be considering a sneaky engage, but look at this, Pagon covering the entrance to the jungle. He's gonna get some good poke damage Onto the Oni Warriors as the Fire Giant drops down to half HP. Wild Hunt hits no one. Neilma rooted in place, and the Skewers plus Panda Cat plenty to deal with the Horus. And now FineOK wants to keep this thing going. Bat out of hell turns into a kill. Vote turns into dust as the Jade Dragons rallying around a tier 2. And Panda, he wants to fight as well. He's got a double kill now in this fight. Polar Bear Mike into the kill feed officially. Everyone from the Jade Dragons notching one. And it's back to the FG with 4 extra kills.
Yeah, Dardes is just, I'm going to call it lucky, right? Like, walks away was 1 hit while running under the Phoenix, and if it weren't for the fact that there were just easier targets to kill, the Dragons would have gone after him. And it is a small miracle that might not last long enough for him. Luckily, Neil respawns, so it's not a technical deicide.
It's because he's so low level, he comes back the moment he dies.
Yeah, the downside is the ramification. He's 5 levels down, 4 levels in the jungle. I mean, this is
look. There's some support gods where you're like a Ymir. You're way behind. You're like, at least you can throw up a freeze, toss up a wall. That wall, regardless of your level, well, once you get it fully leveled up, is gonna last forever. Horus is not like that.
Nah.
Horus wants to be in there, man. I don't know what Neil's gonna be able to do over the next 5 or so minutes of this game. 5, 10, 15 minutes of this game. It's gonna be a tough slope.
I mean, even to your point, like a Ymir in this kind of scenario still has like Guardian scaling, right? And Ymir specifically, the best Guardian scaling, right? He is the tankiest god at max level in the game. Horus is still a warrior, right? So like those items are very helpful. Late game, you fit that quote unquote Guardian style, that support style, but you gotta have a late game. You're level 13 right now if you're Neil. At 23 minutes in, you're not getting any farm. There's nothing you can really do. There's 2 chin size on the other side, a 6-0 and 5 set. Where are you supposed to stand? What are you gonna dash in to stun them? No, you're gonna die. You can't use your ult that aggressively. It feels like it's not only an awkward spot because you can't really run off to farm on your own, but an awkward spot because a lot of your utility is gonna it's gonna result in a 1-to-1 at best if you're Neil. At worst, you just end up dying. So I'm curious to watch where the utility goes. The heal's still going to be nice. The stun is still good. But the Dragons have been playing way too well together for it to be as important since it's a single target.
I mean, this game is now simple for Mike. He can simply walk in, stun, all the CC, all the lockdown in the world makes no difference. He goes down to half HP at worst. In the meantime, his carries have knocked down over half of the HP on the Phoenix, and Pagon hasn't had to do anything yet in this fight. I'm waiting to see a teleport or a skewer over the wall. And Pagon getting aggressive. FineOK blinks forward. He's found the back line. He's got to use Bat out of hell. Left side Phoenix still stands, and it will still stand, but Cubo Fred will not. Pagon unstoppable. And this might just snowball out of control. We'll see how many Pagon can get in this final fight. Neilma gives one over to Panda Cat. And now it's the Oni Warriors back in their fountain, and it's the Jade Dragons. They're on the Titan at 24 minutes. Vote Dardes out of the fountain they go. Pagon into the fountain he goes. He'll walk back out. He'll live, and the Jade Dragons mop the floor with the Oni Warriors and take sole possession of 2nd seed.
And look, you called that one super early on, and it came down to a very, very simple portion of the game, which is, man, you said, I think this is starting out to look like a very standard Jade Dragons 25-minute game. That's exactly what we got. We got a team that came out with a surge of damage. And from that double kill, they start getting neutral objectives. They start invading more often. Hell, the invade started things off. I mean, that was really the big offset at the beginning of this game, is a little bit of experience that goes the way of Panda Cat that doesn't go the other way. And then slowly you start to stack that on the left-hand side. It rolls up in mid. We didn't see FineOK for like 15 minutes, and when he joins, he's still technically a level behind on Nika for a majority of that, but it didn't matter because the rest of his team was just slapping the Warriors around like they were playthings.
Yeah, Pagon said he gone over and over and over this game. This one's simple for the Jade Dragons. A quick 2-0, and a good luck for the Jade Dragons to end our day here on this fine Saturday. That's it for Gore and I. We'll go back to the desk, though, to break down what happens in game number 2.
Oh, game number 2 was just a case of the early game Jade Dragons, where in game number 1 I said, okay, we could probably throw the first 20, 25 minutes or so out of the game. That's all that we had in game number 2. From minute 1, Pagon and Scream are just running down the Oni Warriors, and up until the very end of the game when the Titan falls, it's still Scream and Pagon and the rest of Jade Dragons running down the Oni Warriors. I mean, this one, pretty simple for the Jade Dragons. I mean, we were asking for it on the desk. If you're going to draft a composition like this one, Mifflin, you've got to start jamming it down as early as possible. Jade Dragons do just that and make it look easy.
I'm sticking to my guns, man. I'm pretty sure, I'm absolutely certain of it, the Jade Dragons got massively draft diffed here. All the Oni Warriors needed to do was make sure what happened didn't happen. Survive to the 15 or 20-minute mark, group up as 5, take a team fight, and I don't see any way the Jade Dragons composition could have won out in that style of engagement. But the Jade Dragons never allowed that position, and it kind of led to a situation where you got double Cthulhu as your top 2. I never once saw 2 Cthulhus on the screen at the same time. The Jade Dragons blitzkrieg their enemy here. I'm sure if we were to ask the Dragons, and we'll probably get an opportunity to talk to them a little bit later on, they'll say they didn't get draft chasmed. I am here to tell you that one was control. If I'm the Oni Warriors, I'm already celebrating going to a Game 3, legitimately. But this was the only winning line for the Jade Dragons, was to Jazzberry Jam. They made it such a narrow win condition for themselves with this draft, and then they Jazzberry Jammed them anyway. I would be utterly and completely frustrated if I were the Oni Warriors right now.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to that point on Dardas with the Morgan, we saw one highlight where he transformed into a Cernanos. I can't think what else Dardas was transforming into this game, like realistically. I mean, maybe into the Raven to try and get an easy CC immune escape, or the Camazotz to do so, but I mean, you're right to say I don't think we ever saw the 2 Cthulhu come out from this
It
composition.
didn't happen. He turned into Set twice. He died both times.
Yeah, that's probably CC, probably 3 levels down to the enemy set. You got same items, but Pagon's just got all the momentum in his control there. Ends unstoppable at 7-0-6 for Pagon, 3-0-6 for Panda Cat, combined 10-0 for the 2 carries of the Jade Dragons. But man, this is just the classic case. This is Jade Dragons are tired of these games going long. They want to get it done in 25 minutes or less, and they do exactly that in game number 2. And the good news is that we do have one of the Jazzberry Jammers standing by for our post-game interview. It's Pagon, the mid laner, the unstoppable Set, standing by with Dilson.
That's right. Pagon was doing the Jazzberry jamming here in game number 2. Pagon, I have to imagine there's dueling forces with you. The desire not to be interviewed, but also the desire to do really, really well in these games. Do you have a hard time balancing the two? Do you feel like doing well in the game usually wins and you kind of just have to do the interviews?
Yeah, every time we win, I always dread the interview. Should have played worse, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Unfortunately for you, you did really, really well there in game 2. Mifflin has this idea, though, that you guys got majorly draft diffed. Do you feel like in game 2, your comp was just holistically worse than what the Oni Warriors had and you overcame it regardless?
Maybe. I'm not a good drafter, so I don't know what's going on. Scream does that for us.
All right, so Scream, you got draft diffed according to Miff going into game 2. The Set, do you think that, I mean, you look at what the Oni Warriors had drafted. Did you guys realize going into that game that you getting off to a fantastic start was the win condition? Did that feel like a big setup game for you?
Yeah, I think it was kind of just bound to happen. He's playing a mage, I'm playing an OP assassin. Mages are bad, so.
Happens every once in a while. Well, look, now you guys sole possession of 2nd seed. Congrats on the win. Looking forward to what you guys can get done throughout the rest of the phase. That's it for Pagon, and I will go back to the desk to end the day.
Gotta love the honesty from Pagon there. Says, look, I'm not the one who does the drafts. They just tell me what I need to play, what I need to carry on, and well, he did exactly that on the set. 7-0-6 for the mid laner, the Jade Dragons. A strong performance from them, and they were able to grab themselves a 2-0 victory to end out our day. And that was our 3rd and final set of the day, but that's not our final day of play. Make sure that you tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. because we've got the Olympus Bolts and the Atlantis Leviathans to kick things off. Solar Scarabs, Camelot Kings after that, and the Jade Dragons and the Tartarus Titans to round out our 6th week of this phase. But it was a win for the Leviathans today, a win for the Titans 2-0, and a 2-0 Jade Dragons for our Saturday of Smite. And that does put sole possession of 2nd place, at least for the time being, over to the Jade Dragons, sitting at 8-3 themselves. 2 wins over the next highest seed above them with the Camelot Kings, but also 2 positions above them is the Atlantis Leviathans, who are currently tied for that opportunity to take the SPL win streak record, sitting at that 10-0 for themselves. Remember, they lost the very first set of the phase and have gone 10 undefeated matchups since that point. Still, dropping a game here and there, not a big deal, but holding on to that set win. Valhalla Valkyrie still trying to fight into that top 6, but now that much more difficult with their loss up here today. Makes it a little bit harder for a team like Valhalla Valkyries to make it in. But Mivla, I'm very excited for the set that we get to kick off things tomorrow, and I hope that you, the fans, are also excited. So make sure that you tune in 11 a.m. EST tomorrow as we come back for the final day of the SMITE Pro League.